I really don't understand why it is human beings have fought so hard to impose reality on people, and yet reality still remains the intangible, imperceivable, but at the same time, it's it's a ubiquitous understanding, right? We all understand we die, we shit, we piss, we fuck, we eat, we cry, all this. So what is the meaning of this imposition of reality? All for ideas, all for ideologies. And the thing is, every single ideology is perfect. All of them are perfect. What's perfect to us is intangible to everyone else. What's perfect to you is intangible to me, but it's it's within your own conception, so it's tangible enough to you. But every single ideology is perfect by design because even if you came up with it and you didn't evaluate the strengths and weaknesses of it, it's still perfect. Even the best ideologies, and that's once they come into reality, that's when we realize this perfection is something that's going to have to be chased over and over and over again. It's one reason why even politically, like I've read through the entire spectrum, right? And in terms of, human value to the economy, leftist philosophers and ideas and criticisms about ruling power structures have remained till now. The only thing they can do is damage control and just make sure the population stays ignorant, right? While most people not realizing a lot of the things that they have access to are because of those scary fucking communists and socialists, right? Even anarchists. And a lot of those terms are confusing because sometimes they're even interchangeable. Anyways, the reason why even those ideologies made me quite uh skeptical is because of how they focus on human labor, human value in terms of our labor. Yeah, I think I'm saying that right. I think. At least, at the very least, one of your intrinsic uh aspects of you as a human is the value you put into this world, and you being able to own that value through your labor and the time the time you put in for that labor as well is like a central uh is central to the understanding of these leftist ideals. At the very least, I'm not sure. It could be something like that, but roughly like that. And yet, it's relatively vacant. It's relatively vacant about, you know, the understanding of human life itself, in that if it's really a socialist or a communist or an anarchist utopia we're chasing, even then, would it still make sense to give birth to children during that transitional process? Right? I know it sounds kind of confusing, but in effect, if everyone really owned the value of their labor and their time, would we just be doing things to help one another, right? To improve our situation? I would like to think so. But even in such ideologies, Do you get rid of human jealousy so easily, or envy, or a hunger for power? Even if we lived in, some sort of, and the funny thing is, even people on the right, or even like let's say the far right, like religious zealot types, they believe in communism too, because like after the apocalypse happens, everybody will be living in the same place. They're all equal, right? They're all gonna be equal. They're all gonna be doing the exact same thing. They won't have to pay for anything, and they won't ever die. They won't ever have any need for hunger or thirst or like that. That is like ultra communism, I would say, right? Even then, whatever ideologies are proposed to like as an alternative to what we have to endure right now, they're all perfect until put into practice. And I'm just focusing on like leftism just because it's had a very short, it's had a relatively short history in the past 300 years. Although, I mean, yeah, it does stretch further back, but let's say the modern period, right? But it's had such a drastic effect on the world. It could be any ideology. I'm talking fucking even fascists think their ideology is the way forward for all humanity, right? Any number of ideologies. I'm just giving examples. And the idea of perfection itself is an idea that's chased all the fucking time by people who, if we ourselves are imperfect, how can we even conceptualize of perfection, right? How can we have a uniform understanding of perfection? You can say, okay, this person looks attractive, or they're the most attractive person you've ever seen, or this is the most delicious food you've ever tasted. This is the best music you've ever heard. Is it perfect? Is it perfect? Is it perfect for your personal taste? Maybe, right? But why do we chase perfect ideologies? And we know, right? We know that they'll never be implemented the way you want them to be implemented, right? It's like taking a brainstorming session and then trying to run the world with a brainstorm session. That's basically what we're doing. And people are making it up in the worst ways possible as they go along, right? You can make shit up and still get a far way ahead, right? But people are just making shit up now. Like they just literally just right. Like they're still conforming to like social norms, but they're also making their own fucking shit up, right? What never fails to make me laugh is seeing like fucking like these IG models or whatever. It could just be some like random women like twerking and stripping, and then like in their description they'll be like a child of God, and then they'll have like a Bible verse, and I'm like, yo. If they were doing this in church, I'd literally be in the front fucking row every single Sunday. God damn. But everyone's involved in their own fan fiction, and they're doing everything they can to force everybody to buy into it, right? Because their understanding of the world is so perfect. And it's one reason I find uh this this moralizing from the left so pretentious. I've seen it devolve so quickly into such hatred and pettiness and hypocrisy, right? They always say like, okay, it's not actually about oppression Olympics, it's about understanding your marginalized identity, blah blah blah. But it literally turns into that, right? It literally turns into a fucking like who has the most marginalized identities. We have to uplift their marginalized voices higher and higher, and that is like not even oppression Olympics, that's like pity Olympics, which is disgraceful. You if you're a marginalized person, you want to be pitied that much? Oh, we need to uplift their voices, and the crazy thing is the levels of fucking entitlement is given people because of their marginalized identities. Like, they can be as disrespectful as just as hypocritical as the people they call bigots or misogynist or fatful, you name it. There's such a sheer level of entitlement. I'd love to just dump these fucking like uh like leftist demagogues and then like these right-wing anti-SJW demagogues in one place and just watch them like tear each other to shreds, because it's so thoroughly entertaining how people are. And most of the times you look at the person, you listen to the person, like they're not even they don't even know what the fuck they're saying. They're lying to themselves. They're not even like, they're speaking from a place of self-hatred, but they just disguise it so well in terms of like intelligent words and just this fucking hell, pre-made talking points, right? And you'll notice everybody, they all have the same fucking talking points over and over. Like, no research involved, nothing. Just one person says something, it flies, and then the next person says it, the next person says it, the next person says it, and then you're like, do you have any evidence? No. They just start attacking you, right? That's their evidence. That's their fucking evidence. And I'm so glad that, while the YouTube Nazi channels were still up, I was literally able to like delve in and just look at these people and what it is they're saying, like, oh, we have to deplatform and protect the fucking people of color. No, fuck you. How about that, right? Fuck you. I'm gonna fucking look for what I want to look for. In that, I understood exactly what these people thought, how they thought, even what kind of music they listened to, right? What kind of literature they like to invoke, how they use science to justify their positions, right? All their internal contradictions were on full display. And it's so fucked up how, like, there's still Nazi channels on YouTube, by the way. They're still there. There's very few of them, right? But they're nowhere near as nuanced, if I should say, nuanced as the way they were before, right? These I like being exposed to different ideologies, being exposed to how people rationalize certain ideologies to themselves is ultimately a way forward. A way forward to understanding why there's so much misunderstanding, right? Because even in your understanding of what antinatalism or being child free is, you have a way that you express it, right? We're all expressing the exact same thing, but you have your own way, you know? And because I just talked about like conformity, isn't that a form of conformity in itself? If people all manage to believe or to adhere to antinatalist principles, isn't that a form of conformity? You know, isn't it a form of, although like I explained, conformity is forced through violence and then distilled through social norms. So I wouldn't want to impose antinatalism. I don't think that's a very viable idea. I wouldn't, once you have to impose an idea, you're not imposing an idea, you're imposing fear, right? You're imposing fear of consequences of not adhering to the idea. That's why people are so attached to it. And that's why indoctrination itself is a fail safe, really. It's a fail safe mechanism to ensure that that idea proliferates. It's a reason why getting people to undo their religious beliefs or their beliefs about society or gender, race, the money itself, it's so hard because There are multiple ways that we're indoctrinated at home, at school, within friends, in the media, in literature, right? In prized literature. And it's so hard to undo all of it unless you yourself you explore other avenues by yourself, with no real expectations to what you're going to find. And the concept of society itself is so fucking rigid everywhere you go now because of that false conformity. People are like, it's toxic positivity what people are adhering to. Everything's great. Everything's pretty shit. But next year or next generation or the future, or when this guy comes into power or when that person comes into power, or maybe if things like that's all people are fucking doing. And what's the ideology driving them? What are they being driven by? Right? They've rewired their brains to adhere to what is essentially a virus in their head that just wants to replicate itself. We've created these ideas which become entities that take over our minds to replicate themselves. They're no different from viruses. It's just that viruses are tangible. We can observe them through a fucking microscope. But at the same time, I mean, if the ideology itself originated from the brain, then wouldn't it also be observable? At least I think. Yeah. It's it's a shame that people are they're so narrow-minded and confident in how narrow-minded they are. It's the fear of the unknown. And yet every day is the unknown. So well, people pick and choose what they're afraid of, right? It's not even like they're really afraid of things. They just, every day, every next day is the fucking unknown, right? But because people are given a timetable and a schedule, and they'll just follow it, right? But they won't step out of it because it'll be like, oh, what if I lose this, or what if that happens, blah blah blah. But like, all those things you're afraid of happening could literally happen at that time that you're thinking about it, or the next day, or the next day after that, or the next day after that. So what exactly is there to fear in the unknown? In an age where people consider themselves more enlightened than every other past generation, and yet people are so fucking stupid. The most common sense issues we have, people can't even fucking bother to solve them, but somehow we're so enlightened. Pathetic. When you have an idea, just realize that it's already perfect. But what perfect means is that it doesn't exist until you make it exist, and then it's no longer perfect. It's the same thing with human life. And this is why, even to ask, when we get the rebuttal of of course the unborn cannot consent, right? I've seen it a lot. The unborn cannot consent. So how can you ask somebody for consent who doesn't exist? And yet, before a child is born, he's created in the mind. He, she, they are created in the mind. They could be in the mind of somebody from the point where they're like 10 years old. They'd be like, oh yeah, I want to have a kid of my own, or whatever. Till they have a kid like 20 years later. That child has existed in their minds for 20 years. Right? And of course you can ask an unborn for consent. Yet, the idea we have of the future, like the idea you have of a child is just an ends to the means. To the means of you really pushing off that That insatiable urge to understand this fucking place. It's not here for us to understand. First of all, this place is not here for us to understand. It's for us to go fucking insane. Honestly, it's like a gladiator pit, and yet nobody's even equipped to fight. That's what the fuck we're living in. And that's why you see so many people are just they're tearing each other up, right? They're literally tearing each other up, and not even understanding why.